Hi, I'm Dalin Malna, and last time we talked about how different Sonic formulas had strengths and weaknesses, but I never really got around to answering the question in the title of that video. What is the ultimate Sonic formula? Well, today we're going to dig into that a little. So to start off, I'm going to say that my idea of the ultimate Sonic formula may obviously be different than some others. I think Sonic has had a lot of different directions, there's a lot of different ways you could go, but to me, the most promising is the idea of a Sonic Adventure 3. Now, I'll admit, even in my own video, I said that the Sonic Adventure series it wasn't exactly true to the core of Sonic. But I would also say that it had the most potential. There's so much creativity there. I think if we took the basic ideas of a Sonic Adventure game and sort of streamlined them, you could end up with a Sonic game that really was better than anything that came before it. So that's my idea of a Sonic Adventure 3. Now, what exactly would my Sonic Adventure 3 look like? So, I'm going to focus mostly on the mechanics rather than the story. I will say, story-wise, I think it's important to have a giant kind of epic tale that's not quite as Saturday morning cartoon-ish. I really enjoy the biohazard from Sonic Adventure 2 that tied into the creation of Shadow and the mystery of the ancient culture in Sonic Adventure 1. That kind of grand tale with a little bit of a mystery I think is really important. Sonic 06 tried this with Mephiles, but obviously the whole bestiality thing kind of got in the way of that. Plot aside, I'm going to focus mostly on the mechanics today. My Sonic Adventure 3 would primarily focus on Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, maybe Shadow. I wouldn't want to stretch myself too thin. I do think Shadow could work well as a fourth playstyle, but I also know that lately there sort of has been a focus on basically 3 playstyles. That's been pretty true to Sonic ever since 2 in 06. So I would like to squeeze in a fourth, but if it came down to it, I'd rather focus on quality over quantity. So most of what I talk about will be focused on those 3 main playstyles, but I may mention my idea for a Shadow playstyle once in a while. The general level design of this game would be kind of going, to use the pun, back to formula. What I mean by this is that we're going to have a focus on Sonic 3 and Knuckles or Sonic CD-esque levels. Those were really wide and open and had a lot of different paths. Maze-like structures even at points. And if you were really good, you could go through really quickly, but there was a lot of room to explore. Now, the reason I want to do this isn't because I want it to turn into a sort of sloggy, slow game, but I want to offer opportunities for different playstyles. Rather than having a bunch of different levels, each for their own character, more like Sonic Adventure 2, I kind of like the idea of Sonic Adventure, and to a degree Sonic 06, where there's reused levels that have similar parts overlapping, but also different levels in and of themselves. So, what I mean is you go to Zone 1, which would be, Beach Garden Zone, just making something up, and a large section of it is going to be the same across all 3 characters. However, throughout the level, there are going to be sections unique to each character. And that would really be where you see the differences. I would want this to play almost more like a 3D Sonic 3, rather than having the playstyles be way too different. This allows you to really keep a focus and emphasis on momentum-based platforming, which is absolutely important, as I've mentioned before. So, what would differentiate the characters then? I don't really want it to be like Sonic Mania, where everyone is Sonic and the levels are all absolutely identical, just with a few differences. I really want there to be meaningful differences between the characters, but still stay true to momentum-based platforming. So, I would want the Sonic section specifically to be about really fast, horizontal movement, and I'll get a little bit more into what I mean specifically by that in a minute. Tails would be more about exploration and vertical movement, and Knuckles would be about hunting for secrets throughout a stage. If I had Shadow, I would actually kind of want him to be based on Gamma, which I know is a weird thing to say. I would want him to retain the speed he has in Sonic Adventure 2 and in his other games, but I wouldn't mind giving him a sort of laser gun like Gamma or some of the mechs had. I think there could be a real emphasis on chaining combos together, and having him to keep his speed up by constantly attacking enemies to keep some sort of power meter up, or what have you. I think that could be a more technical-based thing. He'd share a lot more level design with Sonic than anyone else necessarily super unique to himself, but I think that it would really allow for you to keep up a real combo-type style gameplay and add some unique technical gameplay that might be missing from the other characters. So I would want each, like I said, I would want each level to have overlapping areas and areas unique to themselves. For Sonic, I would want there to be boost sections. In principle, I would want them to be actually similar to the Mach Speed sections from Sonic 06, which were terrible, but I want them to control like a boost level. Imagine if you're playing more like a Sonic Adventure level. You get 3 minutes in, it's a normal Sonic Adventure level, and you get near the end, and then at the end there's basically a boost formula level, and those only last like a minute and a half to 2. But think of how great that would be. I've always said that the boost formula simply didn't offer enough to be a gameplay style on its own, but if it supplemented adventure-style gameplay, that would be absolutely amazing. I would love to see a Sonic adventure-style game with huge, long, meaty sections, like 2 minutes minimum, of boost-style gameplay. I think that could absolutely make for the best Sonic has ever been, and clearly allow for both a meatier and longer and easier to make adventure-style levels, while still having those adrenaline-pumped boost style levels. I think that would be the absolute best of both worlds. Now, Knuckles would have more one-off maze-like sections. I think it'd be great to get a section level that, you know, like a rock that he could bust through, similar to Sonic and Knuckles, and allow him to go through into these kind of mazier sections where maybe you could hide a Chaos Emerald or a Master Emerald, what have you, but I think treasure hunting really is great. So there's large sections where it's kind of just platforming, but that only gets you to these sections where it would be like a smaller kind of like the Dry Lagoon stage in Sonic Adventure 2, where they're not these giant sprawling levels most of the time, but they allow you to kind of have these little mazes and puzzles we have to figure out. I think a greater emphasis on solving some puzzles would be really interesting for him. Kind of force you to slow down, figure out climbing, you know, unique moving around sections. Tails is really free in his movement, but Knuckles has a lot more freedom than Sonic, but not enough that it's just fly wherever you want. I think it'd be interesting to have some kind of puzzles that are based around his unique movement set and how to get to different places. Tails would have unique flying challenges, so there'd be large sections where, you know, you could take a shortcut or find a unique part of a level. I also think it would be great to have, you know, a huge emphasis on, obviously, a vertical movement, which would allow Tails to really fly in some interesting ways, and an emphasis on upgrades. I think finding and emphasizing his mechanical skills would be really great, that if you actually bothered to take these paths that were maybe a little out of your way, you could find really interesting upgrades that would allow him to get new movesets or new abilities. So that's my basic outline for what an ultimate Sonic formula would end up looking in the gameplay department. I also think it would be really unique to actually allow, if I could ask for things, I think they would be mostly overlapping levels, but to have a few sections where they have unique levels to themselves, I think would be great. Now, in my head, just for instance, Sonic Adventure 2 had about 30 stages between everyone, and Sonic and Knuckles had about 14 zones, depending on if you count those as separate levels or not. You could count it as 28 acts, but basically 14 zones. I wouldn't mind roughly 10 overlapping levels, and then maybe everyone could get a few levels to themselves, 2 or 3 levels to themselves, and that could really allow for you going through the whole game. You would basically end up getting like 30 experiences with some overlapping content, but there'd be enough unique stuff to itself to really make it worth your while. Or maybe the Act 1s of each level could be overlapping, and the Act 2 of each level could really dive into their unique section. I think that could be great, where basically half the levels are repeating or have very similar overlapping sections, but the quote-unquote Act 2 of each level would dive into a more unique aspect of their gameplay and be more unique to them. Story-wise, I of course would try and have the overlapping plots. I think that's totally relevant, and I really think that if you bound all that together, you would have the beginnings of the ultimate Sonic formula. I think that could please everyone, or most everyone, but not stretch yourself too thin. It would have a really focused design, but everyone would be happy. It would still be based on momentum-based platforming. The people that say I want to play like Sonic, the characters would play similar enough to Sonic that it wouldn't ruin the experience, but there'd be enough variety that it's not boring and the other characters wouldn't feel pointless. Now, of course, there is one important thing I have left out, but I figure this is just a given. Chao Garden has to return. Absolutely essential. I adore the Chao Garden. It needs to return. It needs to expand. I also like the idea, this has been toyed with in other games, of raising Chaos, maybe altering your attributes a bit. Not too much, but maybe you could raise the Chao. If it's a speed type, you could bring a Chao with you into the missions, and maybe it would increase your running speed slightly, or things like that. I wouldn't want to break the game, but I think allowing for very minimal... I wouldn't want a stat grindy RPG type game. I think that would be awful. But I think allowing the Chaos to play into the upgrade system would be amazing. Sort of like how Sonic Generations had an upgrade system, but I think instead of buying upgrades, you could raise Chao, and that would give them a tangible effect on the real gameplay. I would love that idea. The other thing I would do is release a Chao Garden app that would connect to the game. So you could connect your app to the game and bring your Chao with you, and as you walked, kind of like Pokemon Go, you have a pedometer on it, and as you walk, maybe it could get more powerful or find items that were useful to you. I really don't think that would be too hard. I don't think what I'm asking here is a game that would be too impossible to make. I don't think I'm asking for ridiculous, crazy amounts of content. I actually think in a lot of ways this would be less content than Sonic Team has tried to make before. I just think it would be a little bit more focused. So, I know this one's a bit shorter, but I felt like rather than analyzing the whole series, this is just kind of my idea for what the ultimate Sonic formula would look like. Basically, an altered version of Sonic Adventure 3. Very much taking the adventure formula, but tempering it down and trying to craft it into something that would be perfect. It would be very focused. I think the only people that might not be happy are the people that don't enjoy the more complex stories, but I would just include a scene skip and simply allow people to skip the story if they don't like it. I think that'd be great, but the people that do enjoy the stories and do enjoy the more mystery aspects that previous Sonic games kind of have, I think that'd be great. I wouldn't want to go so self-serious as Sonic dying causing the end of the world, but I really did enjoy the kind of mystery of Knuckles' tribe disappearing or Shadow's creation. I think you could do something like that that's a moderately interesting mystery that doesn't have to be too self-serious. It could still be goofy and fun, but just something a little bit more interesting than Cubot had his voice modulator destroyed, or, oh no, the Zenny were controlled by a shell and now they aren't anymore. The stories have not just been boring and not as intriguing, but just annoying. Everything they did got in the way of what's kind of the appeal of Sonic. So I think that we could revert to a little bit more interesting. Something like Sonic and the Black Knight, as interesting as the gameplay of that game even was really good story. And I think returning to a focus on at least an interesting mystery and characters taking it slightly more seriously. I don't want it to be self-serious, like Shadow the Hedgehog, where it becomes a parody of itself. But characters actually having some stakes in the story and some, taking the situations around them with a grain of seriousness. And Sonic still being tough and cocky in the face of evil, I think that's what makes it great. If Sonic's not threatened, his cockiness just comes off as annoying. It's just run-of-the-mill. When Sonic's actually in danger and there are actual stakes, and he still shows cockiness, I think that turns that character flaw into a good character trait, where he's confident and doesn't back down to evil. Otherwise, he's just kind of a jerk. Anyway, thanks so much for listening to my ramble, and let me know what you think about this idea. Maybe if you have some different ideas for what an ultimate Sonic formula would look like, tell me down in the comments, okay? I'm Dalan Malna. God bless.
So, you got detention. You screwed up. You know what you did was wrong. The question is, how are you going to make things right? Maybe you were trying to be cool. But take it from a guy who's been frozen for 65 years.
That's no good.